Hello, everyone, and welcome to this weekly webinar produced by Business Performance USA. We're honored to have you as our guests, and we're glad that you wanted to join us for our webinar today, and it's Marketing Distills the Brand. I'm Cynthia Stewart. I'm Managing Partner for Evermore Services, and I'll be your host today. And we also have with us your presenter, Mr. Victor Dominguez, and he's managing partner for Ligature Group. Let's talk a little bit first about Victor. He's launched 3 successful businesses in addition to serving as a senior executive for 2 Fortune 500 corporations, CB Richard Ellis and Morgan Stanley. Also, while he was at CB Richard Ellis, Victor's marketing strategies, along with the team that he built, helped the firm achieve the #1 brand in the industry, and that's globally. In the course of his career, he's worked with over 80 companies to build their brand equity through corporate communications, branding, marketing, sales, customer service, and organizational development. And you don't usually see organizational development in the list of someone with the marketing background, and that's what makes Victor so spectacular. His marketing and selling strategies have generated tens of millions in revenue for numerous Fortune 500 corporations. So we want to make sure that this hour is worth your time, and we want to encourage you to send your questions using the chat feature. We will also be including polls. So we'll give you a chance to log in what you think, and we'll ask you to be sure to send us questions and email at businessperformanceusa.org. Also, watch for, and you can download this incredible paper that he's written on create an authentic brand. So you don't want to miss your opportunity to do that. If you have any specific questions now, be sure to use that chat feature, and you should find that right up top on your GoToMeeting panel. We are recording this webinar, and you can view it at a later date. So watch for Victor's white paper, case studies, and other papers on the topic. You just have to visit the website at Business Performance USA to find the webinar recording and other information. All right, so that's all the intro we need, Victor, and we are ready for you to begin.
Thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate that. It's always good to hear your voice. Even better to work with you, so thank you. Welcome, everybody. I am Victor Dominguez. I'm sure you figured that out. Today we're talking about branding, and this webinar is for anybody that either works on brands, owns a business, or is interested in propelling their company towards further success, because the way we define brand is really about operational excellence. That's why I have the organizational development component to my background, because I learned long ago it's not just about flowery words and pretty pictures. Those work, those are important, but it's really how the whole company performs. So we follow this whole series, the Exponential Brand series, with the basic tenet that when employees have a great working experience, they deliver a great brand experience. And that's just really, really fundamental, and it speaks to the core of what we're doing here. So today's focus is really kind of a 3-part process. We're going to talk more about what is brand strategy and an understanding of that. That follows from our previous webinar where we talk about people building the brand. Second, we're going to talk about a brand audit. Where is your brand? Where is any brand at in the marketplace? And then third, what are the creative aspects of creating a brand? That's generally what people think of, the creative team. Obviously a critical component of that. But let's review quickly. Our definition of a brand is that a brand is defined by the experience a customer receives with every touch point of a company. So this is a little different from other brand definitions, but what we're doing here is building an authentic brand from the core. We typically start by looking at the core revenue engine of that, and that keeps everybody true to the real business model. So if you're building, a boy band, for instance, you're probably not really too concerned about longevity and durability for your model. If you're managing a company like Coca-Cola, a 100 plus year brand, you're all about longevity, and that's what this philosophy is about: the longevity, the durable brand that transcends fads, trends, viral social events. So understanding that we start with the core revenue engine and all of these back office disciplines that are described here, we're going to move forward quickly, but we wanted to just benchmark this presentation with what we've learned in the previous webinar, and that is the operational excellence that's required. Now, we're going to be talking really more about defining the intent of the brand. One example may be Intuit's software company. Their intent is to simplify the business of life. That's how they wrap it up. So we're going to be talking about how you can project your intent of the brand experience. And after you've gone through these 6 steps, what we ultimately do, and this is where marketing picks up, is that they distill these results to create the essence of the brand. So let's presume we have operational excellence in hand and we're trucking along. And this is where marketing can really learn from the experiences that the company is delivering and distill that to become the fuel of their marketing engine. So what is in this distilled brand? What we may call marketing fuel. Well, we've got the brand strategy, brand positioning, brand identity, and there's differences to all of these. Now, the brand strategy is really very much like the business model. You would hear components of the brand strategy discussed at the C-suite executive level, the senior management, because it deals with all of those same issues they're dealt with in building a company and moving it forward in the marketplace. But specifically in terms of brand, we're talking about brand positioning, the master branding guidelines at CB Richard Ellis, for instance. We had to be very deliberate about our taxonomy and branding because we had 13 major business units, 37 specialty group service units, all under the CBRE corporate brand. And that's where you have to be very deliberate. Now, brand positioning even gets more so into the essence of the brand. And this is your reputation, if you will. This is the soul of the company. And this is why all that hard work in the previous slide pays off, because this is where you create or project an authentic brand, something that's true and durable, as we say time and time again. Now, brand identity is typically what people first think about and somewhat regrettably first work on in terms of building a brand. They want a new logo and they want a new look, and they work on their visual communications and design and typography, color palette. Those are absolutely essential, but that is the finishing touch on a beautiful building or a painting or anything else you're building. It's the style that reflects your genuine reputation, and it is comes to fruition built out of the strategy. So we want to talk about brand identity as a latter step in building a brand, although in this, like I said, in this webinar, we're going to get into brand identity in the latter third portion of it. So we've got this poll question. Cynthia, I'll let you take over this at the moment.
Okay, this is a chance for us to get a feel for our audience and see what you think. And you'll notice the poll question is, are these C-suite functions part of the brand strategy? And I'm going to launch the poll now, and you'll be able to give your answer that all of these, true or false, are part of the brand strategy. So here goes the poll. Go ahead and submit true or false. And Victor, we have about 40% of our audience has voted. They're thinking about it, it looks like. Oh, the pump bumped up to about 75, and there we go. Okay. We've hit 100%, Victor. We're going to close the poll, and guess what? Everyone says true. So what do you say to that?
Well, I'm happy actually when I say to that. I'm glad to hear that. It's what we've been talking about this webinar and the past one, that all of these components are part of the brand strategy. It's not just the identity. Uh, Branding managers and designers and copywriters and everyone really needs to understand the financial analysis that has taken place. What is the P&L forecast? What are the drivers for this brand that move it forward in the marketplace? And those drivers, by the way, uh, you know, tend to be current events. What are the risks in place in all of those issues? So that's where that's a fundamental understanding that branding people have to have. And if you're going to hire a creative team to work on your brand, truly, they have to be talented, they have to be gifted, they have to have that unique quality that creative people have, but they also have to understand business. They got to know about issues and strategies. And this is essentially a SWOT analysis, if you will. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of a company? Your branding people need to understand those things. And operations, of course, we talked about operational excellence. So I'm very happy, Cynthia, to hear that result. And that's good news to me. We're going to move on. Appreciate that. And this is just a big monster slide here. Good news for you is we're not going to drill all through it. So you can be probably happy for that. But this single slide, this one page, if you do nothing else following this webinar, should be a place where you begin your brand strategy. And it shouldn't be that difficult if you have really thoroughly worked out your business model. What is your strategy? And that's the top third portion of this. What's your big idea in the marketplace? The middle portion gets into leadership issues, and purpose is on top because purpose is the driver for motivation in the workplace. We have a colleague, Dr. John Carnegie, and he fundamentally changes hospitals by rallying the employees around a single passionate purpose, and that purpose is to deliver ideal patient care. And the employees are also given the ability to recognize problems, to learn from those problems by proactively solving them on the spot rather than sweeping them under the rug. And that purpose literally transforms hospitals, and what could be more noble than that? So this is leadership material in the middle. I've met executives, frankly, that just simply don't care about this. And I could argue otherwise. Now, I would love the opportunity to sit down with them and prove them that values really do matter. The last part is market strategies. This is tactical implementation. This should be in your business plan already. But this is also a bridge from executive level to branding and marketing people so that everyone can get on the same page. Let's just look at some of the specifics here because we could make a whole webinar about this one slide. Let's talk about your big idea. If you're working for a company, you need to know what is the big idea. Business Performance USA, our big idea is human ingenuity is best revealed through collaboration. It speaks to our mission that we want to liberate the human potential in the workplace. We want workplaces to be fun, viable, creative, exciting, and we want people to have meaning and purpose in their work. And this is our big idea. This is what we live for, and this is why we get up for it in the day. Now, these 5 buckets here, again, relate back to the core of the business, but it's how a marketer or a brander would interpret that business model. And expectations, we'll talk about that quickly. It's what other branders would call the promise of the brand. Now, I don't like that word. Promises have an expectation for being broken, and you cannot break your promises to your customers. You must fulfill them. So let's just put that promise aside. Let's set expectations. And you set expectations because you love your customers, you want to do things for them, but frankly, you also need the discipline of telling your customers no. You need to understand what you will not do for your customers. It's a little bit of tough love, but that's setting the right expectations. Some customers want a high touch, some want a digital touch, some want low cost, some want high service. You need to define what those expectations are. Now we're going to jump over to storytelling, and there's nothing more ancient with humans than storytelling. It was the most effective form of communication back around the campfire, in front of the caves, and it's still the most effective storytelling now. I believe, I'm pretty sure we have a really phenomenal storyteller on the webinar with us today. I worked with her. Her name is Elizabeth, and she's a phenomenal storyteller. If you can find a writer that tells stories for you in a compelling, compassionate, and motivating way, your brand is going to go through the roof. You want to tell stories. So the question is, for your brand, what's your story? And that feeds right into sales and everything else. Uniqueness is your differentiation. Simple as that. So we can make this slide available for you. It's specific to Business Performance USA, and we'll issue a generic one, but we're happy to lay out here right on the table what makes us unique, what is our strategy. And we consider all of these to be touch points, if you will. All of those blue cubes symbolically represent touch points, and we'll show you why. But let's look at another way of how the brand is distilled, if you will, and how it's managed. And this is all about creating the customer touch points. And we've got three of them classically. We've got developing right relationships, with the right customers, and over the right channels. But the right relationships, if you think about it, we all have numerous relationships, and they're all a little different. I'm married, I have children. Those are very unique and special relationships to me. I've got guy friends, and those are low maintenance relationships, very easy. And you're not going to have the same type of relationships with all your customers. Some customers want, like I said earlier, a high touch relationship. Some want a digital low touch relationship. Some want a hybrid, and those hybrids where a customer wants high-end service but occasionally wants to go online. Those are very unique and challenging relationships to develop, and frankly, they're the most important relationships, and you need an adaptable company that can manage those kind of relationships at the will of the customer. Now, right customers really speaks to profitability and what I said earlier. Some customers you simply don't want to do business with. You can't make everybody happy. So you need profitability models to understand who are the right customers for your business. Some people call those ideal customers. And last, the channels. Multi-channel businesses, multiple business channels. Sometimes it's brick and mortar, sometimes it's on the line, sometimes it's consumer direct, sometimes it's through third parties. You need a company that's going to be very adept and adaptable in managing all your channels, because the customer is going to choose which channel they want to use today, and they're going to want to use a different channel tomorrow, maybe even later this afternoon. And you need to make these experiences, these touch points, consistent with all of those channels. And that is not an easy thing to do. But if you can master this slide, these 3 points, you're going to have a solid foundation where customer centricity is at the center of it. So there you go. We're going to talk a little more about customer touch points, and these relate to the interaction with the customer. So second to the brand roadmap, this is maybe one of the most important slides. If you did nothing else other than the brand roadmap, you might want to take a look at this process here. And this is starting with an understanding that a touch point is where a customer experience takes place. It can be all kinds of touch points. Now this slide here is centric towards communications. That's the essence of branding and marketing. And so we're dialing it that way. So you can look at this archetypical consumer here, the much coveted consumer of American companies, and she is going to be on the left or behind her are these lagging or trailing touch points, touch points that have already happened. Now these are fading memory because people forget shortly what you did 3 days ago. They're really more interested in what you're doing right now and in the future. So, but it's important to look at the trailing indicators, what was done, because that's what you can track and measure. That's where you can understand where your communications were effective. If your unique selling proposition worked, if their call to action worked, if the transaction took place, if it didn't take place, why? All of those issues are your history, and they need to be archived and analyzed and acted upon. It's the classic get out in the marketplace, take action, test, measure, refine, and relaunch and re-engage. And this is a critical component. Now, obviously, the most critical point is right at the center, where we're supporting communications, probably with a CRM type system to enhance experiences. So this is the magic moment of the brand. What experience are you delivering right then, right there, across all channels? And you need to know who that customer is so that you can support them in that transaction. Last is the anticipation of experiences, and this is where you have to get very proactive. This is where you look to the future and anticipate what's going to happen next, how it's going to happen in the ideal circumstance. Now, all of this also relates to other issues, not just branding, not just communication. You could look at the same kind of process, past, present, and future, in regards to product development as well, so you can anticipate what experiences your products and services want to deliver for your customers. So it's not just marketing, it's not just branding, it's not just communications, it's all of the types of experiences that your company will deliver. And if you look at that current Apple ad, what I believe it's called the signature ad, it's a very, very simple ad, but they talk about the experiences that customers have with their products, whether they really realize it or not. And that's how you should be looking at your company as well in terms of your brand. We're going to jump over second part, the brand audit. Where are you at? How is your brand working for you? So in really simple terms, and I've seen people overcomplicate this and spend a lot of money on assessments and things like that. You can make a lot of progress with some common sense and understanding. Do you have a bad brand? In other words, are you a cable company? Do you have an indifferent brand? Nobody knows about you. They're just simply not present on the landscape. People are doing business with you, but you're not gaining market share with an indifferent brand. Or you have a good brand. Now, below that is like brand, love brand. I'm not going to get into that detail, but branders, brand managers love to work on those nuances, and they should. But let's just keep it simple. Now, if you have a bad brand, your business is sinking, frankly. You're not bringing on new customers, you're not getting referrals, you're not gaining market share. In fact, you're in attrition. You know what that looks like if you just look at a spreadsheet. Now, an indifferent brand may sound bad, but it's actually full of ripe opportunities. And indifferent brand is a white, clean sheet of paper where you can really reinvent yourself. That's a tremendous opportunity. A good brand is great, but it's actually, ironically, maybe one of the hardest places to be at. It's the classic, how do you go from good to great? But the good brand, you'll probably find people in that company that are complacent, that are happy, that think, things are working, we don't have to work that hard, let's just keep doing what we've always done to get where we're at. Well, the great companies and the great brands will evolve themselves and risk trying new things that have never been done before and risk giving up on old ways. And this is ironically perhaps the most difficult place to be in, is to be in a good brand. Now, once you do this assessment, you can do it through surveys, and we won't get into that, but what do you do? Where do you go next? And you're faced with two choices, a brand evolution or a brand revolution. If you have a good brand, you're evolving it and you're progressively moving it. Or sometimes, certainly if you have a bad brand, you need a revolution. But if you're in a major acquisition or a major product launch or all kinds of things, you may want a brand revolution. A revolution forgoes much of the legacy of the past, not all of it, but completely, new name, perhaps, certainly new logo, new look, new image, new experiences, new products, new services. So there's a lot of reasons for choosing evolution or revolution. You can probably infer by these names is what you need to do. But whatever you do, and this is where most companies really don't understand, this is where the organizational development comes in. Working on your brand in any capacity is an opportunity for you to re-engage your employees, state a new purpose, state all those leadership issues that we showed earlier, and really change the culture of your company. It's time to get rid of the bad behaviors. It's time to start trusting your employees. It's time to start honoring the intrinsic knowledge that your employees have. And that knowledge, that experience that your frontline employees have is really where the brand is going to be delivered and experienced. And this is the time to do it. Change scares people, but you have to give them a better reason for adopting change than they have for staying where they are. And this is a great opportunity. If you're not using brand as an opportunity to change, then you're missing the boat, frankly. Now, quickly, we're just going to go through this. This is a brand audit. Where are we failing? Where are we succeeding? These questions you see in the lower right in the blue are questions that customers will ask you. And if you can't answer these questions as a company, as everyone in the company, then you're not going to take a customer through a proper life cycle. We've got the classics here, and this is very much a sales-oriented slide, but it absolutely relates to branding and marketing because obviously, unfortunately don't, but obviously branding, marketing, sales, customer service all need to collaborate and be on the same page in creating these customer experiences. But salespeople understand this more than others. It's the classic suspects, prospects, customers, but how do you move from a say prospect into somebody who is truly loves and advocates your brand? Well, you have to be prepared to evolve your customer experiences as that customer enters into the maturity of their life cycle. The first thing a suspect asks, why do you exist? This is the Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And this is the new empathy and emotional component that's in society, and that is in brands, that is in customers, that has to be addressed right up front. What is your purpose? Going back to that. What can you do for me? Who can I trust to look out for me? These are really important questions. If you're not able to answer these as an organization, then you're not able to fully reveal the opportunity that each customer has. So, Ms. Cynthia, we have a poll question here, and at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, very good. Now that we've heard a little bit from Victor, let's hear from you guys. Which factors will determine the brand experience? And I'll be launching that poll right now. Go ahead and submit your answer. And we almost have everyone who's voted. And I don't know what it is about this particular crowd today, Victor, but they are in agreement that D, all of the above.
Okay, well, that tells me two things. First of all, it tells me I need harder questions. So I'm glad you're all enjoying the softballs that we're pitching. It's kind of like listening to a Katie Couric interview. But that aside, I'm glad, frankly, that people understand these are critical factors. Performance, obviously, does the brand meet customer expectations? That goes back to that word expectations, not promises. Does it do better than the alternatives, than your competition? Does your communication perform? Do your products perform? You got to perform in this world or you'll get passed by. So obviously that's good. But treatment is rising. People will not put up with being treated poorly. They just won't. And poor treatment will spread virally, as I'm sure you know, far, far faster than good treatment. That's why smart companies monitor Twitter and set up listening posts. And a smart company, as soon as a bad tweet goes out, the company will respond. I mean, not in, obviously in a belligerent way, but in a proactive, positive way to reassure treatment for that individual. Community, it's all about communities. Business performance is a community. We want to serve our community, and that's how we're building our own brand. So happy to hear that people get it. So the last component here is the creative development. This is almost the big drum roll, hit the cymbal, ta-da, because frankly, this is what most people think about when you're creating a brand. And look, I'm passionate about this because this is my legacy of my career. I started as a graphic designer and illustrator just in 6 lifetimes ago. And I'm all about the creative side of building a brand. I'm passionate about it. But one reason I'm doing what I'm doing now is because I've understood that if you don't get the core of the company down to a T, then what creative people are forced to do is stick, uh, window dressing on a dump or lipstick on a pig. And I'm sorry for the harsh analogies there, but every branding person, the creative people on this call fully understand when they look at a company and think, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to do what with this? So, if you have real content, if you have a purpose and a mission, and you create and you deliver on performance, you treat people with respect, you have a community, your branding, your creative people will just light up because they really have something substantive to work for. So some of the basic components, if you are not a creative person, these are elements that you need to be able to communicate with your creative people or your creative team. If you're going to hire a company to work on your brand, and you should, you're going to hire smart people in-house to work on your marketing, and you should, you need to also understand their language. Just as a marketing branding person needs to learn the speak and the language, the argot of your company and your industry, so must you learn to some degree how to speak to a creative. And a creative in this reference is really a noun. It's a person. It's a really talented individual, like Elizabeth, if you will. So basic breakdown. Let's look at a brand from two sides of it. We've got functional components and we've got emotional components. Now, functional components, just like you might say in Dragnet, Jack Webb, just the facts, ma'am. Now, this is where you deliver all the information that's pertinent to your products and services and contracts and everything else. This is data, it's information. And look, there's a lot of linear people out there, smart linear people that just want to get to the bottom line of it. Don't mess with them. Give them the facts straightforward. Let them learn. People shop on the internet for facts and information. That used to be the role of the salesperson. It's now the role of the empowered consumer. And help them do their research on your company by communicating effectively and efficiently the functional components of your brand. Now, emotional components, this is rising higher and higher and higher with the direction our society is going in. I'm not making a societal comment or opinion here. I'm just saying emotions speak very, very loudly. When people want to communicate to you, they're more likely to tell you how they feel than how they think. People are challenged, frankly, with telling you their rationale or making observations and correlating that to root issues. They're much more comfortable in simply talking about how they feel. And what's interesting is last year Harvard did a study on individuals, and they tracked their brain waves, brain movements, patterns, and locations in the brain where thoughts and emotions take place and feelings take place. And they learned that when people talk about themselves, there's the same type of physical and chemical reaction in the brain that occurs when they're, say, having a terrific meal in a great restaurant, or whatever high pleasurable moments an individual will have in their life. Talking about themselves triggers the same type of brain waves, the same type of chemistry and patterns. And that's fascinating to me. So do not underestimate how powerful connections and relationships are and how they create loyalty and community. It's very, very strong. And if you're not understanding the emotional components of branding, of selling, of experiences, then you're missing out on a big, big part of what is going to make your brand really, really powerful. So you want to list these out: functional components and emotional components. and understand how to communicate both of those well. Now, one way to communicate both of these well, functional and emotional components, is through written and visual communication. So uh, let's just say as an analogy, what flour and yeast and water and salt is to a baker, written and visual communications are to a brand manager or a marketing manager or a creative. This is their raw clay. This is their Play-Doh. Now, written communications, obviously, there's nothing more precise than written communications. Um, it's succinct. Alphanumeric expressions, for instance, are the most accurate form of communications we have. The written word is very, very powerful. The spoken word, maybe even more so because of the storytelling aspect. And of course, visual communications, images, what that creates, what that invokes in you. All you have to do is go back to the ancient cave paintings, medieval churches, temples, and mosques, how they communicated visually. And you can learn a lot about how passionately and quickly people can learn. The reason logos work so well is because of that visual communication, that instant recognition. So it takes less brain energy, less brain damage, if you will, to process and connect with an image than it does to read the written word. But when you get both of these working in harmony, synchronized, then it's just wildly powerful. Then you've got something really, really magic. Now, logically, one might assume that written communications kind of speaks to the functional components and the visual communication speaks to the emotional components. And there's definite truth to that. They're probably weighted in those categories more so. If you're going to communicate functional components, information, data, obviously it's going to be written in alphanumeric, expressions. But that's not to say that these two don't overlap a whole lot. As you know quite well, written communications, poetry, a beautiful, eloquent novel, you know, tons of emotions in that. Visual communications, you can come up with a graphic that is exceptionally stark and visual and communicative, informative, quite possibly even offensive. So both of these transcend and overlap into functional emotional components, but it's really understanding this magic. And you want to have people working on your brand that are experts at written and visual communications and how they balance. A little tip and trick, and this has always drove me nuts when managing graphic designers. Graphic designers, great visual communicators, but it's remarkably, they don't often read the copy that they're laying out. If they're designing a website, a brochure, a poster, whatever, it's remarkable. You ask a graphic designer, well, what do the words say? And they can't tell you. They didn't actually read it. You need writers that understand visuals. You need visual communicators that understand writing, because it is that magic marriage. It's that bridge, if you will. So what about logos? Classic, and this is usually when people want to do a brand, they first think about logos. That's great. I've only designed 4,000 of them in my lifetime. It just seems that way. And let's just cover some basics, because people are forgetting the fundamental reason for a logo. And let's just cover some of the classics here that that people are making mistakes on because of lack of discipline. First and foremost, a logo must exist in black and white. It absolutely has to. And for versatility and production, if you're going to make signage and promotional items and a tiny little icon bug and a sponsor ad somewhere or on a t-shirt, it's got to be simplified down to the very, very basics. What that means is the logo has to be executed in line art. Now, you don't have to know what line art is, although you can look in the lower right corner here and you can see the lines, if you will, that make up this logo. So it has to be in black and white, and then of course you can have a color version. I recommend keep the color scheme simple, one, maybe two colors, really, really simple and basic. I don't know how many people on this webinar actually observe these things. A classic mistake currently still going on for years and years is the Verizon logo. The Verizon logo started out with sort of a check mark, strangely in the same shape composition as the Nike swoop. Why they mimicking the Nike swoop, I have no idea. But the Verizon, signal bounce or whatever that thing is, that check mark, is rendered in what we call a gradation. So it goes from black to red into a white, bleeds off transparently into the white background. Absolutely a crazy notion if you want to execute a logo effectively. I've been observing the Verizon logo for years now, and they're still trying to correct it. They actually have a new version out, which is true line art, and that gradation is gone. It doesn't fade into the white background, for instance. But they still don't have it right, and it's remarkable how a $1 billion corporation can get it wrong. And frankly, as much as I love creatives, they sometimes lack discipline. And you need discipline if you're going to be a designer, if you're going to be a writer. What I always say is you got to learn the rules before you break the rules. And if you follow the rules on logo designs or writing or anything else, then you're entitled to break a rule once in a while, but you do it when you can get maximum effect. You don't just break a rule like Verizon did right at the beginning, because all you're doing is setting yourself up for trouble. So I guess enough of my preaching about logos, but you can probably tell it's something I'm a little passionate about. We have somebody on the webinar that's going to recognize this ad, and I just think it's brilliant. The marketing staff that worked at New Century was as good as any marketing, branding, advertising agency I've ever seen. They're just really quality people here. And this ad, you may not think this is a wildly high quality ad, but you cannot deny its success. And those at New Century Mortgage Corporation or New Century Financial understood how successful this ad was and this whole concept was. So New Century starts out with this ad, very straightforward. They're just they're poking fun at the whole industry, frankly, and they're staying relevant to their audience. This is a wholesale group that works with brokers. These brokers bring them business. It's a very distinct business channel in the mortgage and financial services industry. So in regards to channels, just another explanation of that, obviously a consumer can go directly to a company, they can go directly to a broker, they can go to a direct lender, and there's all kinds of ways to obtain a mortgage loan. This division served the brokers, the third-party brokers that brought them business. So that's a business channel. Now, back to the creative side of it here. I love just the poking of fun. It's kind of the duh factor. Studies show that brokers prefer trained account executives to untrained ones. Well, no kidding. But the problem is the industry was and is rife with untrained account executives and frankly untrained brokers for that matter. And so they're just having fun. And their tagline, we get it. We get it about this industry. We get it what you want. And what they're saying they get, if you will, are the 5 brand pillars at the bottom of this ad. Now, I pulled these pillars out. The ad wasn't formatted this way, but I wanted you to see them more distinctly and more clearly. Sorry, just making a quick note. We didn't talk about brand pillars, and they're very, very important, but I knew this ad would do it for us. So the 4 brand pillars, what they are going to deliver, this sets expectations, this relates to their strategy, this relates to their uniqueness, this helps the storytelling. All of these 4 pillars, or 5 pillars, support what New Century is about and why they're so effective. And this is almost stacked ranked in terms of priority. Brokers want faster closing. They want fast, 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 okay? They want ongoing training. Now, we train our account executives, and that's important, but we also did, now I worked at New Century too, so when I say why, that's the reason. We also train the brokers, and generally that involved a cocktail party at the end of the day. So you can imagine why the ongoing training ranked high among the brand pillars. Now, diverse products. Brokers want a variety of products to serve the broadest scope or the broadest reach of customers. They want support. hey, I got a problem, help me. And the team approach was, what companies should be doing is, there's lots of people available to help you, and each of them have expertise. It's the multidisciplinary team approach. Um, so that's the 5 pillars there. We're going to move on and talk about a brand style guide. This is going to be the last section, if you will, in this presentation. Anybody developing and maintaining a brand is going to require a brand style guide. And I don't care how small you are, if you're a dry cleaner and you occasionally run some print ads, you need a very basic brand style guide. We'll be showing you components of a very robust or in-depth style guide, but this basically means consistency in execution. And it's really meant for the entire company, not just for the marketers and designers and writers, the quote creative team. You can see here, brand style guide. This is an expression that is contemporary with a little bit of retro thrown in, bold colors, but very simple at the same time. Very little on objective imagery, something that's easily recognizable. It's the composition and color that really give the impact. This is just one example of it. In a brand style guide, or any way that you communicate to your employees about your brand, you need to talk to them about the strategy. It's absolutely essential, and this goes back to the concept that if you're going to work on your brand, involve the entire company, because it's a great opportunity for you to make change in your organization, to get people to live up honorably to expectations that you have and that your customers have. So we talk about strategy here, and it's very, very basic. This bank wants to be relevant, they want to be profitable, and they want to be customer-centric. And those are important messages to talk to the employees about. Profitable is not necessarily what you might think it was. This was developed in 2010 when people were still in the meltdown of the financial collapse, and people didn't trust banks. They still don't. People want to know that a bank was profitable at this time in history because too many banks were folding. So, am I going to, if I give you my money, is it safe? That was a big deal in 2010. We also want to teach employees and marketers how to write and how to speak. So the first the key brand positioning, the universal message, and this was for the marketers more so, and their tagline, you ask, we listen. Strategically, the bank wanted more interaction with their customers, not less. And the personal relationships is where they scored the highest in all of their surveys. So we wanted to accentuate that. We wanted to create dialogue between the customers and the personnel. And this was our theme, you ask, we listen. In other words, if you ask us to jump, we'll respond how high. Now, we also encouraged and trained employees to finish every conversation with, we're here to help, just ask. This bank would run to a doctor's office and get a check for that doctor to deposit. High level of high touch. And their answer when they pick up that check from the doctor in his office, hey, we're here to help, just ask. Simple as that. But this is how you change culture. This is how you get everyone on board to deliver a consistent brand. This is one example of a print ad. It's cropped off so you don't see it all, but the brand style guide is going to explain the specifics of how to design, how to replicate your brand. And again, I don't care how big, how small you are, you need to lock in your standards for how you're going to produce your visual images and your written words. You can see the key words there, you ask, we listen, and there's context. The push here obviously was to drive people to the online bill pay. Color palette. Do not underestimate the power of color. Now, even though I called the set of logos should have 1, 2 colors at the max, that's true. That doesn't mean you can't have a rich, robust color palette. This color palette proved to be very, very successful. It scores well with men and women, but it is skewed a little towards the desaturated masculine side, if it will, so that men were comfortable with the softer palettes. the pastels, if you will. So it's very rich, very diverse, and a full rainbow effect without being prism colors. This is what you might call jewel color palette. And like I said, it's darkened a little bit, what one would call desaturation. So give a lot of attention to color palette, work with your designers on that. And lastly, this is just about discipline, if you will. You're going to hire graphic designers if you're not one yourself. That's great. I recommend it. Learn how to work with your graphic designers and learn how to, and particularly if you manage them, learn how to teach them discipline. The problem with software these days, it has too many bells, whistles, techniques, and you can get a lot of eye candy generated real easy with all the software available. Problem is, eye candy doesn't necessarily equate to good design. We teach very fundamental aspects. And in fact, if you want to test a graphic designer and see how good they really are, force them to design with the most minimal elements there is. Start with text in black and white. And if you really want to get just crazy ambitious, allow them to create a grid or a structure, if you will, by using some thin rule lines. And that's what you see here. And these rule lines at the top influenced, much of graphic design was influenced by Mondrian, French painter, and anybody that really loves fine art knows Mondrian, and will understand the compositions that he created on his canvases. I'm obviously a big fan too. I like the grid structure that can be inferred from his compositions. You see it here. This is also somewhat reflective of the golden rule of design, the Pythagoras theorem, if you will, but now I'm getting really, really deep. Bottom line is you can do a whole lot with just black and white type and a couple rule lines to set composition. And if a graphic designer cannot create and design within that discipline, then they probably can't be trusted to use the full suite of software tools that they have available to them. So that's about it, Cynthia. We are going to wrap up. Do you have any questions by chance?
Yeah,
Or shall
let's
we
go
just,
ahead and ask the audience if there are any questions anyone wants to ask. We have a few more minutes to the top of the hour, and go ahead and log any of your questions, and we'll pose those to the expert that we have today.
perhaps, Cynthia, why, if anybody or if someone is typing a question, let me just give a little bit of background as to the content people are hearing and listening to here. As stated, this is part 2, Distilling the Brand. Part 1, People Shape the Brand, already occurred. What is generating out of these webinars are a series of white papers. And apparently, I talk too much and write too much and have too much to say. So one paper has really turned into 3, 4, and 5. So out of this exponential brand series, there's a projection of a total of 5 white papers that will come out of these webinars. The first white paper is already created and available for distribution. And in fact, for registering and attending the webinar, you will be sent the first copy of Creating an Authentic Brand white paper. And these white papers will give much more substance and process to creating a true brand for your company. Or you can look at it managing an advertising agency to create your brand, anything associated with moving your brand forward as you would move your business model forward. We'll have it available to you. So Cynthia, are there any questions or shall we hang this
Actually,
up?
we don't have any questions. I want to emphasize some of the things that you said, which I think are really important, and that is it's not just about your look. We all know that. It's not just about your look. Look is important as a reflection. Your brand, your logo, and the brand identity is important, but it is about the experience of the customer. And Victor, we think about the moments of truth when the customer comes in contact with yourself or people in your company and the experience that they carry forward and who they next talk to about their experience. So it's really important to keep in mind that we spend a lot of time on the making it look good, but what we really need to be spending time on is making sure that we're delivering that experience. So very important. Glad you brought that up. And I encourage all of you to go out and look at the website and download his papers. And if you're not a graphic person or you're not in charge of brand, that's okay. Understand that you're an important part of it. And there are other experts that you can seek in your company or outside to help you really build your brand. So we thank you, Victor, for all these. It's clear that you are an expert, and we could see you dive in and really give us a lot of good details about brand and building your brand. And we look forward to your wrap up on this. Victor will be doing brand as his first three webinars, but there is more to come. And don't forget to look at our next week, Walk Your Walk by Dr. Jeff Stewart. Most people talk about talk your walk. So what does he mean, walk your walk? You got to come back next week and hear that. And then we'll be hearing from Roz, and she'll be talking about expense budgets, just getting very uh, down to the nitty gritty in terms of how you budget, what expense budgets are, and what you need to strategically and think and tactically act towards investing in your business. So we look forward to that. We thank everyone today for your attentiveness. It's been great, and we look forward to seeing you back next week. With that, I'll be ending the webinar. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Dr. Jeff.